Hello and welcome to the Raptors Republic post-game show. I'm your host, Oren Weisfeld. Unfortunately, Sahal couldn't be here today. He'll be back soon, but I got an exciting guest for us today. Lior Kozai. How you doing today, man? Oh, hello. Oh, well, looks like we lost him. Just give us a sec here, guys. We'll be back. Hey, other than the internet being bad.
um, can't complain. Could be better, could be worse.
Yeah. So general thoughts about the Raptors coming out ahead of the Wizards. First night of a back-to-back. Raptors pretty much controlled the whole game. How do you feel they played?
Um, like pretty good overall. Like the offense is still looking good. I guess a lot of people were surprised that them being top 10 in offensive rating. I saw that was kind of a discussion this week, but part of it is the opponent, but I think also Siakam now it's like five of his last seven games. I think he scored at least 25 points. He's kind of getting in the rhythm. And Powell just looks really good in the starting lineup and like continues to hit shots, continues to score like basically 10 points every first quarter. They're showing that graphic on the broadcast early in the game. And yeah, just like overall, a really good offensive effort. Like the defense was a little lackluster at times, especially on the perimeter, allowing penetration. But overall, like you play down to your opponents sometimes, and they still came away with like a 20-point win, even while kind of playing down to them. So can't complain about a game like that. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I kind of felt the same way. It felt like the Raptors were never really like they never had their full foot on the gas at any point in that game. They were like laughing the whole time. They weren't really talking to the refs like they usually do, and I think that comes a little bit with the intensity, but they were still focused, especially offensively. They played a really, really good game. Um, and yeah, I mean, it is the Wizards, so it's kind of hard to take too much out of an opponent like that. But let's talk about a few specifics. You mentioned Siakam. Um, what do you think it is about his game other than the 3-point shooting, obviously, what do you think has kind of turned around from him from early in the season when he was really struggling?
I think it's just, not forcing the issue too much, but still staying involved in the game. And whether that's just, it doesn't always have to be with the shot, but just we've seen some games where he's done like, like he had the triple double, he had like 7, 8 assists in a couple games. And this one was more of a scoring game, but he was just really aggressive from the start. I think he had 8 points in the first quarter. And just always looking to attack. And I was kind of getting frustrated later in the game when kind of when the Wizards made a couple of those runs in the third and early fourth quarter where he just wasn't involved at all. He wasn't touching the ball. But in general, he has been like a lot more at the center of the offense. And I think when he's just involved and, like drawing attention because he's a dangerous scorer, especially getting to the rim, which they don't have enough dribble penetration a lot of the time. So when he's just always a threat, I think that just opens things up for everyone else. And then when everyone else needs to be guarded, in turn, that opens things up for him. And
Yeah.
that's how you see these high scoring performances.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you at that point that sometimes like it seems like the opponent has no option to defend Pascal, and yet the Raptors don't run that much through him as much as they could. Are you there? Oh, we lost him again. Dum-dum. Well, it looks like I'm gonna solo this until we get Lior back on air. So that is what it is. I wanted to talk about the Raptors in the post a little bit. Specifically, Robin Lopez really giving them the work early. Um, I was kind of confused because it feels like when the Raptors play good post scores, they usually have like a strategy. And that strategy is to double them if Boucher is on that person. And what we saw against Robin was kind of they started just going single coverage, Boucher on Lopez. It didn't work. And then they kind of adjusted on the fly to like get these random doubles, but it wasn't clear who was doubling. And then they would have a triple. Um, oh, you're back, Lior. I can't hear you. You're muted. You got to unmute it.
Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. I mean, we'll see if it happens again, but we hope not. But yeah, I was just talking about one thing. I don't know if you noticed, like the Raptors' plan in the post on Robin Lopez early seemed really lackluster. Like they didn't really have a plan. Usually they're really good at stopping those post scores with like doubles, but it has to be a part of the scout. And it felt like tonight that just wasn't part of the scout, and Robin Lopez was just feasting inside early. And then they started like doubling, but when they were doubling, it was like sometimes a triple would come and then the rotations wouldn't be there for the help. Um, so that was a little bit weird. What do you think the Raptors did though defensively, like as the game went on? Is there anything you saw them do defensively to kind of like stop the Wizards a little bit?
Um, Nothing like in particular comes to mind. I guess just like I honestly it just felt like effort level watching it. And I mean like a little bit they were trapping Beal on the pick and roll a little bit, at least in the fourth, where I think it's one at least one of the ones that led to I think a Powell steal and a fast break the other way, where they just forced him to kind of split the double and make a decision or just kick it out. And I think just they've been pretty good with that over the years, just stopping stars and forcing someone else to beat them. But
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the problems I thought were just like lack of effort where they're not closing out properly and these 3-point shooters were wide open and some of them they even got lucky with like Avdia missed one. I think Bertans missed one like wide open earlier in the game. So it was just like some of that's a matter of effort, some of it is like scheme in terms of how they're playing the pick and roll. And the bigs have been up and down, but like they do have the perimeter talent defensively to deal with these kind of guards. So it was good to see that improve later in the game.
No, definitely. I don't know if you've been watching some Wizards games this season, but if you have, what are your thoughts on Denny Avdia, the number 9 pick in the draft? He did not have a good game. Raptors really targeted him late.
Yeah.
Really, really went at the rookie there, and it wasn't his best game from three either. But overall this season, what have you seen from him?
Honestly, I haven't seen a ton of Wizards. Like
Same.
they're a tough watch, man. Like I think I've seen maybe one other game besides this one. Like he seems like I don't know. He's not like a super like he's not like a huge part of their rotation either. Where he's just he's coming off the bench for I don't know how many minutes he played tonight, but like he's not a main guy. And they're kind of featuring like obviously Beal and Westbrook are the featured guys, but he just like I don't know, he's not he wasn't super involved in the game, like he was just kind of spotting up for threes. He had that one nice pass where he got in. It was like a quick touch pass to Len for the dunk, so that was nice. But he hasn't really like shown a lot where he's not like creating off pick and rolls or anything yet. So it's so early with these rookies. But what did you think of him?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's way too early to judge, but we gotta fill time with this content, man. Overall though, I think he's like he had another nice pass where he had like an overhand skip pass to Beal in the corner. I think that was when he thought Boucher fouled him, but he probably did foul him. Um, on the Wizards as a whole before I get into Avdia, but he was certainly part of this problem. They just have too many guys who are hesitant shooters, and to have Avdia on the floor with Westbrook with a big man who can't shoot, it's really just like a mess because not only is the spacing messed up, but when guys like Westbrook or Avdia get those open shots, they have to take them. And I think that's the difference in like a Raptors kind of culture compared to a Wizards culture where you're really held accountable to play a certain system. And so I think if Avdia was a Raptor, I don't think he would get away not taking those threes. You know what I mean? Like I think that he's a 3-and-D player in this league. That's what his job is going to be as he goes forward. So I think if Nick Nurse was his coach, it would just be if you're not shooting those threes, like you don't even have to score them at a really high level, but if you're not shooting those threes, then you're not going to be on the floor that much because that's what we ask of you. Overall, though, I think like he's a nice do-it-all player. He doesn't really have any significant weaknesses in his game. Um, I don't know about him as like a high lottery pick, but I like his like feel is really good. His passing's really good. He's like a NBA ready athlete in terms of like his size and strength, but the shooting is probably the biggest thing for him, I think, that he needs to get down.
Yeah, it's interesting you pointed out like with Nurse like and kind of the system like players are just stepping in and kind of doing that where like you're not has they don't have anyone who's really hesitant for three. I mean, besides like the Baines and like guys who shouldn't be shooting it, but like they don't really have many of those players. And even I think Bembry, who looked great tonight again, he wasn't like much of a 3-point shooter in Atlanta. He'd take them once in a while, but he had like he's made like one or two for several games now, and I think he's really like they're encouraging him to shoot it. He usually gets left with like quite a bit of space, and he's not hesitating, and he's knocking those down. So, and I mean, Utah Watanabe is another guy who's doing that when he's healthy. Obviously, he didn't play tonight, but like just lately, when you're getting those catch and shoot in the corner, like, and you're wide open, if you don't take that shot, chances are the offense is probably going to stall out. You're not going to get a better shot. So, just that's something that I've noticed from the bench from the Raptors this season that I really like that they're not too hesitant there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even in Baines, they targeted a center who could shoot the three.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good point on Bembry though that they can turn guys who have good form and mechanics and like can shoot it, but don't necessarily prefer to guys who will take it whenever they're open, and that just like it maybe that's part of why their offense is so good this season. Before we get into more like general Raptors thoughts, because I think this game was kind of a boring one, let's just touch lastly on the Wizards. So this is a segment we do on the show. If you were their GM, what would you do about Bradley Beal? Would you trade him? Would you hang on to him and try to just build around him? What do you think would be the best move for them? Because they are clearly far away from contending.
I think I'd probably trade him now because I don't really see the path to, I guess, the situation that they've put themselves in. I don't really see how you improve with Beal right now and turn this team into like, I mean, maybe like a bottom tier playoff team. That's kind of what I think they were going for this year with Westbrook. But to be a contender, like, there's just no chance. And the East is kind of better at the top the last couple of years, especially. So I don't think you're going anywhere with this core kind of with Beal and then I guess Bertans of Beal. Like I don't think that is really heading anywhere. So I would look to get kind of young players and picks kind of package. I know people throughout the last couple of weeks like Golden State with Wiseman and maybe that Minnesota first rounder, which could be really valuable for next year. I think that pick could be as high as 5 or 6. Like it's protected like right at the top, but it could be a pretty good pick. So something like that, and not necessarily that package, but yeah, I'd probably look to move on just because the team, like as great a player as he is, the team's not going anywhere right now. So you might as well try to cash in. Like you have Hachimura and Dia, and just see what you have with these young guys. They're still going to be getting high lottery picks this year and probably the next year, maybe the year after that. So try to build with the younger core and like hopefully you should get a really good return for Beal because just looking at the market compared to a guy like Holiday drew 5 first round picks. I know the Bucks were in kind of a situation where they like needed to convince Giannis to stay, so they might have overpaid, but you should be able to get a similar deal for Beal. And yeah, like whatever that ends up being, I think that's probably what they end up deciding by the end of the year, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm torn on it. I probably agree with you at the end of the day. I think in an ideal world, they would have like some other guys on good contracts who they could kind of do like a short turnaround on by selling off some pieces and doing a small rebuild because it seems like Beal is okay with staying there for now. but they don't really have those pieces. Westbrook doesn't have any value on the market. And then you look at Bertans, and his contract doesn't look good at all the way he's played this season. So I don't know how much value he has. Like normally I would say keep Beal just because he wants to stay and he's a superstar and he's still relatively young. And, in a market, you don't get superstars who want to stay very often. So ideally you can just kind of stick it out and build for the future with him. But like you said, it's probably at this point so grim that they need to look really long term. Let's get into more like general Raptors things going forward. They're playing the Celtics tomorrow on a back to back. OG Anunoby was questionable tonight. Oh, are we losing? Yeah, we're losing it. Where should I go from here? All right. Well, I was going to talk about the Raptors playing OG. Oh, there you guys are. Oh, Leo's back. All right, so you're back. So let's talk about the Raptors starting lineup. Yeah, OG Anunoby was questionable tonight. He might make the return to the lineup tomorrow. So if OG is healthy, what do you think they do? A lot of people, Powell at this point is just Michael Jordan as a starter and a replacement level player as a bench player. So do you keep them both in the lineup and go small? Do you bring OG off the bench? Do you bring Powell off the bench? What would you do?
Um, I think what they're gonna do is start OG over Powell, like the original starting lineup. Um, I don't know. It's like in theory, like OG makes a lot more sense just because they have their high usage guys in the starting lineup, and OG is that perfect 3 and D player. He can do a little bit more, but like not high usage. So he fits so well next to Kyle, Fred, and Pascal. But like you said, Powell has just been so good in that role. So I might experiment with it and try Powell in the starting lineup. Like I don't know, but I think against Boston, like you could try going small because if there's ever a team to go small against, I know Boston has been starting like Grant Williams lately at the 4, so maybe not, but they do play small a lot with either Tice or Thompson in there, and the 3 wings plus Kemba, or their backup guards, Jeff Teague, whatever it is. They play small a lot, but they have been a little bigger lately. So I might just go with the normal lineup with Powell in there and just see what it's like. Maybe try OG in like a bit of a higher usage role with the bench. They still like to roll like Kyle out there with the bench. So it's not like OG would just be, isolating, creating for himself all the time. And I just like at least try it out. The small lineup I think can still work against maybe teams that play a little smaller and that don't have like a traditional center. We're seeing more and more of those teams. So maybe not Boston, but like going forward. And I don't think they need to be so rigid with the starters, like we saw 2 years ago where they were rotating Ibaka and Valanciunas like almost every game, just depending on the matchup. So I think they should at least be open to trying either Powell in the starting lineup or the small lineup with both of them and Siakam at the 5. What do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they will kind of test things out until they find what works. But I think that's a good point about Boston is that on top of the fact that they're playing pretty small, they also just don't have real post scorers in their big men. Like that's not what they do. So you can have an OG defend them. I really like that small lineup playing big minutes. The only thing I question is, do you want, OG and Pascal banging with big bodies from the beginning of the game till the end kind of thing? But honestly, Baines has been so bad for them. He's just driving losing at every game recently that I don't think you need to keep going to him just because it like seems
But
like the obvious solution.
honestly, Baines.
So yeah, I'd kind of like to see them go small.
Hey, he had a couple dunks tonight against revenge game against Alex Len.
That's
Starter
true.
moves.
At least they were
So,
dunks because when he tries to lay it up, it doesn't go so well.
how is Alex Len a starter now? Like I know Thomas Bryant got hurt for them, but that is just unbelievable. But yeah, like you said, Baines just cannot like he can't finish in the lane, and then I mean even defensively, where he's supposed to be kind of at least like in some matchups, like he was great against Vucevic last week, but just in general, he's getting killed like pick and rolls. The guards just want to attack him because they know he's slow. He's a bigger guy who's going to drop back. So yeah, like you said, like I don't think they want to have OG and Pascal bang with these big guys every night, but like even if you have to bring Boucher in like 5 minutes into the game, 4 minutes into the game, like I think it might be worth it just so that you don't start off in a hole against basically every good team. Every time they play a good team, they have struggles in the first quarter basically, except
Yeah.
when Norman Powell is like lighting it up the way he has lately.
Yeah, yeah, and I've been watching some Boucher film for this story I'm working on, and just the difference. And you don't even think of Boucher as a good pick and roll defender, at least until this season. But the difference between him and Baines when it comes to kind of corralling that guard in the pick and roll is astounding. And I think I underrated coming into the season just how like I thought he would be kind of like a Marc Gasol, but I think what I underrated was that Mark just has so much more length and size in the pick and roll that it's much harder to shoot over him. Um, Even Baines in the exact same spot Mark would be in, he just doesn't have the size to contest shooters like that. So yeah, it's been really rough in the pick and roll. They've had to adjust almost every game, it seems like. So before I guess we completely move on from this game, I want to highlight a couple plays. This is something we've been doing on the show and kind of talk about what it means for the Raptors, offense or defense. So the first one I'm going to show, I'm not sure if you have the YouTube um, link up, but if you want to pull it up, you can watch it live and then see what I'm talking about here. But the first one I'm going to show is basically just Powell going up for I think a layup, and then Pascal going really aggressively for the offensive rebound, and then Powell putting it back, giving it to Powell, and then Powell putting it back in. And, it's a pretty basic play. The only reason I wanted to really highlight it is because, and I want to transition to the Raptors offense after these clips, but is because the Raptors have a really improved offense, even in the half court, little improved offense this season. And there's a lot of little reasons around the margins why I think. And one of them is that the Raptors are offensive rebounding a lot better than they have in the past. So they are they're getting 26.1% of the offensive rebounds in the game as a team, and that's 14th in the league. And in the Nick Nurse era, they've never been better than 20th in the league. They're usually hovering around 22%. It has to do for sure with guys like Ibaka and Gasol just not being like as aggressive going for those. And it also just has to do with the system change, I think, where they're kind of being a little bit more loose, letting guys like Boucher and especially Siakam and Boucher go for those. And then their defensive transition defense is a little less of a priority, I would say. But you know, yeah, their defense is a little worse this season, but I think it's worth it if the offense is going to be this good. And so now we'll get into the second clip. Um, and it's also on top of Boucher and Siakam. It's also guys like Bembry, Davis, and Utah Watanabe. They've also been really good on the offensive boards.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's kind of uh like a conscious choice by the team to have these guys kind of crash the glass versus just getting back in transition every time. Like they did get burned in transition like at least a few times tonight, and maybe that's something they'll dial back at some point. But for sure, like the activity on the glass, I think offensive rebounding is a lot more of effort than technique versus defensive rebounding is a lot of boxing out and just being in the right position. And Ibaka and Gasol were generally pretty good at on the defensive side, even if they weren't like great, they were still like at least average, a little above average. Versus on offense, it's just like having these guys dig down and crush the glass, and Boucher especially being like super long and athletic can always go for those tip-ins and all that. So yeah, definitely a good observation that like we saw all the time tonight.
Yeah, and so we'll go to the other clip here, which is something I would like to see more personally, which is basically Siakam as a ball handler in the pick and roll. There's a whole lot of ways to use Siakam, which I think is what makes him so valuable. Is just that he's a pretty multi-dimensional player, pretty versatile on both ends. He can do a lot of things, and obviously it's something he needs to work on. As his handle definitely is, I would say, the number one thing, and that is in the pick and roll is important. But this is Siakam running a pick and roll with Boucher, with Fred VanVleet, Norm Powell, and DeAndre Bembry spacing the floor. And it's just kind of like a really hard thing to guard. It's something I wish the Raptors would go to more, especially like late in games when they really need that offense, is just pick and rolls, whether it's Siakam Boucher or Siakam with a small guard, because in this one, Brad Beal steps up to help. And then Siakam, with his improved playmaking, he finds Norm in the corner for an open three, and Norm hits it. And that was kind of the moment when the Wizards had just gone on a run, and then the Raptors kind of came back, and that was the moment where they kind of went up again. They were up 10, and then they went up 12, 13, is if the math is correct. And kind of put the game away. So yeah, what do you think about Siakam as a pick and roll ball handler?
Yeah, it's something they really did toward the end of last season before the hiatus. I remember a lot of those games in March. And I think someone wrote about it for Raptors Republic. Sorry, but I don't remember who it was. But yeah, just that inverted pick and roll, especially. I know that one was with Boucher, but the inverted meaning like Siakam as the ball handler and either Lowry or Van Vliet as the screener. And that can kind of get him some mismatches. But even if it's Boucher setting the screen, just I think the fact that Siakam has kind of struggled with his shot this year, the 3-point shot especially, just makes him less of a floor spacer. And teams are kind of letting him shoot that so they can help off him if the pick and roll is between Lowry and Boucher or someone else with Siakam around it. So if you put
New Milkbone
Siakam as the
Farmers
ball
Medley.
handler and good shooters all around, Norm, Lowry, OG, Van Vliet, that makes it a lot harder to guard and contain those pick and rolls because they don't want to bring that third defender over. And if they do, you see what happens, and Powell gets the wide open three. So I really like that they went to that, and I'd like to see it a little bit more, like I talked about earlier, where they kind of went away from Siakam earlier in the fourth, and I think when they go back to him, like that's there for them in a lot of matchups, especially when teams can't switch it. They don't have like most teams don't have those wing defenders who can just switch everything over. And
Yeah, and the reason we talk a lot about, I feel like, the inverted pick and roll with a guard, but the reason I like the one with Boucher is that he's just such a lob threat that the weak side, so in this case the side Bembry was on, they would have to help too, and so he kind of has all the options. It's not just one option. He also would have had the skip pass if he really wanted it. I got one more question for you, and that's, is the Raptors offense real? Like, we've just seen them put up hundreds and hundreds of points against the Hawks, the Nets, and the Wizards, who aren't great defensive teams for sure. But what do you think? Do you think that their offense is going to regress a bit and kind of fall back into like the middle of the league 15s, or do you think it is like a top 10 offense? Where do you see regression or improvement?
Because I think I see like a little bit of regression, just that I don't think they'll be a top 5 or top 7. I think they were 7th last before this game. I don't think they'll be that good, but I still think they can hang around the top 10. I don't think the shooting has been like crazy unsustainable or anything. And I, like you've written about, like the transition offense hasn't been that efficient, right? So it hasn't been that they're feasting in transition the way they did last year. And it's almost like last year's offense was kind of more unsustainable, especially in the playoffs, as we saw, because in the playoffs, teams get back in transition better. And that's kind of one of the key things is that you need to have a better half court offense. And I think this offense, I don't know that it's like I don't know if there's a tangible one aspect that's better because the talent isn't better from last year, but I just think they're spacing the floor a little better because of how well Boucher is shooting, and just the threat of him is a little bit better now, and they're not playing Baines a whole lot. So it's either small lineups or Boucher for, most of the game. And in most matchups, that's really hard to guard because you've just got four four guys who can attack from the perimeter and one big who can kind of roll. Like you said, he's a lob threat. He's a threat inside and on the offensive glass. So I don't know. They're just a little bit more, I guess, versatile as an offense, but and that does make them better. Maybe not as good as they are right now, but like still a little bit better than last year. What do you think? Do you think it's sustainable?
Yeah, I think top 10 is sustainable. I mean, when you look at the Raptors, I just saw this tweet today, and it's kind of funny when you think about it. Like, this team has three and a half guys who could theoretically be all-stars, like all-star level players in Siakam, Van Vliet, Lowry, and OG if he was healthy a little longer. But their depth has been what's killed them early in the season, and their big man play for sure. So I think they have, like, with those four, and then Norm obviously is a really good offensive player, and then Boucher is also a really good offensive player, and like him being such a big part of the rotation for sure is a part of it. I don't know if his shooting is this sustainable, but I think a lot of the parts that he's bringing to the Raptors is sustainable. So I think top 10, yeah, like we talk about in the pick and roll, and this is something I kind of admire the Raptors for, even though, like, as a fan, it's frustrating to watch. Like, as much as I would like to see them run pick and roll a lot, like some teams in the NBA do, it does take away something. I feel like when you go to the playoffs and teams know you're a pick and roll team, I think we've seen certain teams get schemed out a little bit um, from playing the same way. Like, I think of like a team like the Jazz, or like maybe even Portland to an extent. And the Raptors, they brought on Chris Finch, who talked at the beginning of the season about like wanting to make this offense like unpredictable. And I think it is. I think they finally reached this point in the season now where they're putting up 120 points regularly, where the offense is unpredictable. Like, yeah, they do run a little more pick and roll with Siakam, but they're also doing all these clever off ball cuts and all these clever off ball screens with Baines especially. And so I kind of like it. I think, like, when you don't have a real true number one superstar, this is how you win. And the results they're looking good.
Yeah, and I think a big thing with that, with teams, yeah, like you said, being able to stop the pick and roll, we kind of saw that with Portland. I guess like the series against New Orleans a couple of years back, where Lillard and McCollum were getting trapped, and kind of like, what is your solution when like the guards can't create anything? Like Van Vliet and Lowry are small guards, and as good as they are, and as good as Lowry was, even in the playoffs last year against Boston, was really efficient and really good. Or maybe not the most efficient, but still extremely good, especially in the wins. But sometimes those small guards are going to get stopped and trapped, or teams will switch on them. And you kind of need to have something when the ball swings to the other side. You need to have like a counter. And they've done a really good job of like coming up with some kind of counter. And I think a lot of the time it's, those guys off the bench kind of overperforming what they look like on paper, whether that's Powell, who's been like as a starter, but still scoring like way above kind of what you would expect from him, all these 20-point games. And then Bembry and Watanabe, and just making really smart plays and timely plays. And especially with the cutting, like you talked about, like they have a lot of just smart cuts. When someone's driving baseline, they'll cut to the middle, right to the middle of the paint. And when someone's driving down the middle, they'll have those baseline cuts. So they just have more to it than just a standard, pick and roll spread offense and kick it out. And it's either a three or a pick and roll, like pull up jump shot or lob. Like they have a lot of diversity to the offense that I think makes them more unpredictable, like you said, and harder to guard.
Yeah, and then like just a last point on top of the in-series adjustments, which are crucial, there's also like if you want to go deep into the playoffs, every series is going to be different, and some are going to favor your guards, and some are going to favor your big men, and just kind of learning how to play through every single one of them, I guess, is important, and that's something I've admired from Nurse since he took over is the fact that like he's never just been like a regular season, like I'm gutting it, I'm doing everything we can to win this one game. He's really experimental and just willing to try anything to see what sticks. And sometimes you could argue he tries too many crazy things for sure, and like we lose some games maybe, especially like at the beginning of this regular season. But it is what it is. He has big goals, you know. Before I let you go, just do you have any thoughts on the whole anthem thing that happened today with Mark Cuban saying they weren't going to play the anthem, and then Adam Silver saying no, you have to play the anthem, and then Mark Cuban being like, oh yeah, we'll play the anthem. That's cool.
I
Any thoughts on that?
I don't have like a strong opinion on it. Like I think teams should be able to do, what they want, whether that's playing it or not. Like I think someone tweeted, I think it was like Justin Russo, I think he covers the Clippers, said basically summed it up like the Mavs were doing this. They weren't playing the anthem for the first like what almost 2 months of the season, and no one noticed. And
Right.
some random employee just pointed it out to, I don't know, the Athletic, or someone asked the employees, and they said, yeah, like we haven't been playing the anthem. And it suddenly became this huge news story. And I don't know why like people care so much. I guess like us as like north of the border don't really get it, but Americans have like very strong like patriotic people, but like I don't think it should be that big a deal. And I don't think anyone goes to the games for that.
Right. Yeah, we do it here too, though, which is kind of weird because we're a much less
Yeah,
patriotic place than America in general.
yeah,
But
I don't know, from what I heard today of the discussion is that like it was adopted during World War One or World War Two as like a tradition in baseball, and then it kind of spread to the other sports. And I guess like if they're doing it in all 29 cities for, or all 29 other teams for the NBA, then like the Raptors adopted it, the Jays or whatever. But I don't think it's a big deal. Like, yeah, sorry to cut you off there.
no, yeah, I'm with you. I feel like it's such a not big deal that they just I feel like it's pointless personally. Like going to games, I never understood it. Like people have made the point that you don't do it when you go to like a concert or like a movie or something. So why are sports so different? But I feel like ultimately it should be like the players' decisions. And like when you say the team should make the decision, I agree. Like the players on those teams, because they're the ones who like it affects their pregame routine and everything. So I feel like they should be the ones to be like yes or no it. But anyways, Lior, thank you so much for joining us today. We will be back for the Raptors Republic post-game show tomorrow night after the Raptors take on the Boston Celtics, who, by the way, the Raptors are now tied with the Celtics in wins at 12 on the season. So everyone who was saying, oh, you suck, we heard you, Celtics fans, and you